Hello, welcome to the continuation of the Stafford University Christmas lectures. And today we have Robert Lambert with us to talk about bringing heritage to life, which is going to be very interesting. And usually I'd be bumping off of a co-host, but this morning I don't have a co-host. So I'm going to bring Rob up. We'll have a little bit of a chat, and then we'll let him get into his talk and fully talk about heritage. Rob, good morning. How are you?
Morning. Good, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm wonderful, thank you. Can you give us a little bit of what is it that what's your most favorite thing about working in this manner, like working with bringing heritage to life?
I think its main focus for me has always been about trying to provide students and graduates with work experience, really, and
Mm-hmm.
this is one of the many sort of projects that we've been trying to do over the years to be able to do that. We're in an industry that's somewhat difficult at times to find work, certainly in the early stages, and projects like this help us to do sort of research and development, but also add to CVs and really sort of bring along people in a more sort of authentic and organic way, really. Given that work experience really does tend to help.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, whenever you're ready, you can bring up your presentation and you can get started.
Lovely. 1 second.
Yep. And if anyone has any questions or any questions for Rob, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get them up ready for you to have them answered. I'm quite excited to see, and we have lots of people have talked about how they've used game skills in very different, unique ways this week. So I'm interested to see like a physical kind of application for game skills. So without further ado, I'll let Rob take away.
Can you see there, Ben? Okay, so we've got the main title up. That's good. Okay, so welcome to the talk about the Chester House estate and bringing heritage to life. This project focused on digitalising the archaeological finds of the Chester House estate in Wellingborough and placing them at the hands of the public via the app stores. And we're going to talk about the journey that was taken to be able to get this from an idea all the way onto the app stores. And later on, you'll be given a QR code for both of them for each mobile device, Android and Apple. So, first of all, some history about the site. The Chester House estate is a nationally significant heritage site that's overlooking the River Nen, and it's the home to a 17th century Grade 2 listed farmhouse that was purchased by the council in 2004. The site, unfortunately, in 2010 was hit by fire, and as a result, the site's development was then funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund in order to become what it is today. It was publicly launched in, I believe, 2021. And since then, we've been doing a bit of work for it. So it is now a sustainable visitor destination with access for the public to learn about history and heritage. And it's the home of currently 5 local businesses. So the Chester House estate isn't just a visitor location, it's also a scheduled monument. And that means that archaeology takes place there. So it's one of the few places in the country that can demonstrate over 10,000 years of human activity, from the Mesolithic period all the way to the modern. And as you see from the images that are put on screen, it is also home to certain different types of organisation. As mentioned, it's a scheduled monument, and it's home of an unexcavated Roman settlement, and there's only 3 examples of that in Northamptonshire. It is also the home of the ARC, the Northamptonshire Archaeological Resource Centre, which houses over 20,000 boxes of archaeological material from around 3,000 sites across Northamptonshire. And you'll see Ben there, one of the curators at the site, to the top right of your screen, who we did a lot of work with for this project. It is also the home of the Irchester Film School, the Field School, and you'll see images there of people excavating on the site. Now, this typically takes place between June and July every year due to the weather. Unfortunately, most of the rest of the year doesn't provide as good conditions to excavate. And you'll see there from the top image at the right, that is focused to a smaller area at the moment. However, when actually looking to excavate, there is more and more places that they can expand this to across the entire site. And with this, they work in cooperation with a few different things, really. They work with the University of Leicester for their archaeological programs, and also they work with ULAS as well, and SAH. So if you want to take a little bit more of a look into those programs and about archaeology, I strongly suggest that you do so, because they give some very much valued experience for individuals. Now, the blue area that you see within the image to the top right now sort of spans all the way from the River Nen to the motorway nearby. And this is actually significant because the Roman settlement actually spanned the entire area that you can see there in blue. And as you can see from the image below, items that have been found so far have been situated within that red area, which is actually an area near the church and an orchard. So, what did we do? Well, we needed to begin a digital story. In 2021, at the University of Northampton, at the time where I was working as a game design lecturer, we received a research and innovation grant from the institution. Now, this project had 3 strands. One of them was the development that we're going to be talking about today. For the development side, we had a £3,000 budget for digital development, and we employed solely student development team. Now, that consisted of 3 game artists, designers, and programmers. We had 2 artists and a programmer specifically for this project, and they were employed through the duration of the project in order to help generate the artifacts, in which you'll see in a little while later. So this was created in consultation with Chester House representatives, their senior leadership team, marketing, the ARC, and the University of Leicester. We also relied on things like archives and the actual physical objects that have been dug from the site that were located at the ARC itself on the site. Now, what we were looking to do was generate a mobile application that could work alongside the Chester House website and be updated by the Chester House staff. This posed different problems to what we would typically expect, in that we needed to make sure that a browser could be implemented inside of the app itself. Now, as part of that, we needed to generate interactable activities on site in order to expand upon the ones that were actually there as well. So, some of the interactive experiences that are currently at the Chester House estate, typically, they look at sensory activities. So as you can see from the images to the right-hand side, within inside of the museum that is on site, we have things such as that you can listen to visually, you can watch, you can also smell and draw, and really there's a wide variety of sensory activities at the site which can be utilised and benefited from their visitors. Now, what we needed to do was represent the site and its history. As you can see there, people can interact with objects to a certain degree, but maybe not so much in terms of at their own fingertips. We needed to also get visitors exploring the grounds of the site, so that we could the natural beauty of the area could be seen by all, and also brought the history of the site to the attention of the visitors, and not just kept to the main area near the buildings. It needed to be accessible by mobile device, mainly so that there didn't need to be a curator constantly with the users of the mobile device and the app experience. So it was chosen to put it in the hands of the visitor as opposed to a guide. And we needed to make sure that it was complete within one academic year. And finally, be expandable for the future. So let's talk a little bit about the project on the development side. So the brief, you see from the images here, this is some of the visual sort of stimuli about what we eventually created, but it needed to combine real world with computer generated content, such as augmented reality. So we had to place objects within the real world that were computer generated. Now, we needed to make use of existing digital content as well, and we needed to generate new digital content. And it must include two stories that are on the site, the 10,000 years and the Roman town. So digitalizing archaeological made sense. Now, as you see from the image to the right-hand side, we have some information points, we have imagery, and we have some 3D objects. Now you'll see as we go along that different ways of making 3D objects and different ways of providing visual and auditory stimulus for the user was considered all the way along through the project. As you can see from the image to the left-hand side, we placed objects into the actual surroundings, and we also provided the users with guidance auditorily and also through text form. But we had some questions about the project on how this was going to be conducted. Are we allowed to access the existing finds ourselves and hold them and maneuver them? Are we going to look at excavated items? Are we going to be reimagining them? Or are we going to be doing both? How can we scan all of these items? 20,000 boxes full. Which ones do we take a look at? Which ones do we look to scan? How do we scan them? How do we actually place them on the site? Are we going to use GPS, QR codes, or potentially image recognition? There was plenty of questions for us, and we needed research and development time to be able to understand what the best routes for each of these were. So the research and development, what we needed to do first of all, as I mentioned, is we needed to integrate a web browser into the app. And we utilized Uni Web Viewer plugin within Unity to be able to do this. This enabled us to be able to place a web browser inside of the app itself, but also make sure that the web browser couldn't access other sites, so that firewalls or parental restrictions weren't overruled by the app itself. Now, we thought about how to place these items and the troubles that came along with different alternatives. And initially, we did think about QR and image recognition. However, we didn't want to put QR codes on the natural beauty of the site, and image recognition was proving to be quite unreliable with the testing period that we conducted. So we opted for GPS placing the digital items using Google Maps instead. And as you'll see from the images there, we placed objects around the site that would lead the individuals using the app around a narrative as such. Now, we split up the trails into two different pieces, the 10,000 years story and also the Roman settlement or the Roman town story. But all of them were placed using longitudinal and latitudinal values for each of the objects. As you can see here towards the bottom of the screen, we had different places for each of them. The difficulty, though, was in terms of the depth in which they were placed. We had position, but we couldn't control the height in which that they were placed using Google Maps. So we had a lot of work on our hands. And finally, finding the right style and the user experience was something that we wanted to do as well. We initially started off with the premise that we might be making this for school children, but through consultation with Chester House representatives, we come to the conclusion that we needed to make this an app for everyone. So this was quickly scrapped. As you can see there, some of the initial concepts were for sort of more cartoony style characters that could be taking individuals around the site with a derived narrative that wasn't necessarily historically correct, was the initial thoughts there. So how did we go about generating content? Well, as you've seen before, some of the content that already existed as images or videos at the site within the archives. However, we needed to find another way of getting people's hands on some of the artifacts that had been archaeologically dug up from the site. And as you can see from the image to the video to the right hand side, I'm demonstrating the sort of the process that we went through in order to be able to capture the archaeological finds. And this is called photogrammetry. And it focuses on extracting 3D information from photographs. There's different ways of being able to do this, but ultimately it takes a series of photographs, places them within a 3D world context, and then builds up a point cloud to be able to generate a 3D model from those images. As you can see, when data is of high quality, the program in which we were using here for the demonstration shows that the cloud scanned area is green, any poor data in red, and any sort of mediocre or needs maybe further attention was within orange. Now, if you want to try this out at home, there's some free apps available that you can utilize. One called Polycam, one called Reality Scan, both from different developers. We also tried them and tried different programs as well to be able to compute the data. So lots of different attempts were made in order to be able to create photogrammetry. So with these multiple methods, we tried different things. We tried different capture methods, we tried different scanning equipment, and we also tried mobile apps like we see within the video. To the left-hand side, you can see that DSLR camera setup to take photographs of a pot that was found on the site, which is also the inspiration for the Chester House Estates logo. You'll see in a little while that it's a stag that is on the side of the fully reimagined pot there. Now, for this setup, we had a rotary that would slowly take or rotate the object around, and we took photographs over and over again from different angles. You see that a tripod was set up there at a specific angle, but multiple different angles and shots were taken. To the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see an image of myself, Ben, and Paddy. Ben is now currently working on some projects at Double 11, a games company, and Paddy is one of the members of staff at the University of Northampton. We were looking at the pot and thinking, how do we begin to make this this work? Because we've got the inside of the pot, the outside of the pot, the underneath of the pot. We had to do multiple different tests to find out the best ways of getting the results from it. So multiple methods of capturing DSLR cameras, mobile phones, raw images, and also sort of compressed ones as well were tried, but we also tried different capturing methods. These were things such as Meshroom, Meshlab, Polycam, and Reality Scan themselves to be able to try and to gather the data and turn those into the 3D objects. But we had some issues and we had some solutions. The issues were weight of the objects. We actually had to try and move the top of a castle turret, which was not light at all. So myself, Paddy, Ben, and the other Ben at the site were trying to maneuver something that was extremely heavy in the most safest way possible. But we also had to think about how we would scan different parts of that. So the underneath of the heavy object, could we get underneath it? Could we rotate it around to get multiple angles? With this, what sort of issues would we have in terms of light? The light change because of the movement of the object, but also artificial light bouncing off of the object and how that would react for the photographs to generate the 3D objects. And then finally, it was accessing the artifacts. Where could we actually take these objects? And we were somewhat limited to actually performing the photogrammetry process within the Ark at the site because of the significance of the objects. So some of the solutions we had were, as you can see from the imagery, white boxes to try and eliminate some of the light that was artificial within the rooms. 3D modeling and sculpting packages so that we could bring objects together that had been scanned separately, and texture baking and manipulation as well, to be able to try and get some of these objects working as nicely as possible. As you can see from the images there, some of the solutions that we tried to have. So at the top, we have the Roman statue. You'll see that there's a flat plane between them. This is because we had two scans of the object and we needed to try and place them as close as we could together to try and get the eventual finished piece. We initially scanned the object on its front and also on its back, and then we had to use 3D modeling and sculpting software to be able to join the two together. You can see us working on the pot to the bottom of your screen, and we ensured that we could get the best results by trying to combine images in different pieces of software. For that one, we were using Meshroom and Meshlab for the best results of the photographs from the top and the photographs from the bottom of the object. So the right hand side, you can see how some of the images actually come out as objects, certainly with some really shiny surfaces, it becomes quite difficult. So we were really had a battle on our hands with things like glass beads that were found on the site through archaeological dig. But we actually ended up with some nice ones, as you can see there. Just because of the issues that we had, didn't mean that we didn't get some reasonable results. It just took a fair amount of time and manipulation in order to be able to achieve them. Now, with some of the objects, we could scan them, and you'll see that towards the left of the screen. Some of them, however, have never been either dug up or they weren't necessarily even known to have been there. So what we've got there is sort of a gradual scale between what was scanned at the Ark and what was reimagined through 3D modeling and sculpting packages. You'll see there on the left that the logo of the site with the stag for the Chester House has been reimagined. Now that was a part of the original pot that you've seen there. It was split into two pieces. You had the bottom of it that we've seen in the previous slide, and also we had this piece that had been broken off. And we needed then to be able to try and put that back together. And you'll see there from the image towards just the right center that we have a yellow line between the two. At the bottom, you'll see a more noisy scanned element, and to the top, you'll see a sculpted element that was done by Siobhan Reed, who was employed specifically to do some of the 3D work on the project. Now, you'll see there also that we have the Roman statue, and this one was completely scanned as well, and that was done by Ben Green. To the right hand side, we also see the Roman column. Now this was taken from some of the archive material that we received from the site and also from museums that illustrated what would have been there previously. We also had a mixture of media that we could utilize. You'll see here another piece of work to the right-hand side that was completed by Maximilian Rosier, that was also another student that worked on the project. They're a character artist and wanted to focus on generating some creatures and characters to be able to be put into a different kind of setting. To the left-hand side, you'll see some of the repository that's inside of the mobile app that was generated. Now you see to the top left was a fully regenerated Roman town gatehouse produced by Siobhan, and then we have the British Shrine created by Ben, and we have then the oyster shells. We have a photo of the shrine excavation that was taken from archives, the Roman statue, geographical survey results, Roman column, 3D model, the strata stone imagery, and other pieces there of examples of imagery, 3D objects, and things that were taken from the site. So, GPS. How do we place these objects now that we've started to generate them and have them ready? On the left-hand side there on the image, you'll see that we created a spot for the 10,000 year trail. And for each of the trails, they have individual GPS located items. And for this global positioning system, it was a little bit difficult to get right in the beginning, and we certainly had difficulties as we went along. Now, Google Maps, as mentioned earlier on, allows us to be able to plot longitude and latitudinal position. But we have some difficulties that come from some of the technology utilized in mobile devices and also in terms of tracking. Altitude was really difficult to calculate because ultimately we couldn't gather that data and place it into the GPS system on Google Maps. So Google Map pinpoints your location within your phone for 3 to 10 meters at its best. So we were already sort of fighting against some of the limitations that we would have because Google Maps limited us from 3 to 10 meters, but also GPS tracking accuracy issue meant that we had a 2 to 30 meter sort of latency issue, discrepancy when we were utilizing the testers' phones. Now, the reason for this is that devices need to receive strong signals from at least 3 to 4 satellites. Ideally, this would be 7 to 8 in order to get the best pinpointed location. And even then, you're talking sort of 3 meters discrepancy. So in remote locations like Chester House, signals from satellites and phone towers may be a little bit difficult to get. And the reason for this is that phone towers' position and the position of the user will have some range errors. In that, in remote locations, phone towers may be so far apart that they can't provide consistent signals. So these were some of the difficulties that we were sort of seeing and undergoing as we were generating the project. Now, once we'd tried our hand at testing the GPS and getting it down as best as we could on the up-to-date devices, we then had to try and get this onto the App Store. And there's a few considerations that I wanted to bring to your attention if you're trying to do mobile app development yourself, but also some of the learning that we had from trying to get that this mobile app onto there. So for both, we used Unity as an app development tool. Now, this is because of our experience with game development as a group who created this. And with that, we also used Polycam to either compute or to capture some of our photogrammetry. We use multiple methods, but in terms of being cost effective, Polycam and using a DSLR camera seemed to be the best combination that we could utilize. Now, for Apple, we had some further considerations that we had to get past. Now, for that, you need 2 Apple devices. You need an Apple Mac, and you also need an Apple mobile device, which then means if you haven't got one, you need to source one or purchase one. So for SMEs, small, medium enterprises, this can be quite costly. And you also need to consider that you need a developer account to release anything on the Apple Store, and that's $99 per year. And then finally, you also need to actually build the app through Xcode on your Apple Mac. It's not something that you can just generate straight away from Unity. You need to take it through Xcode as well, which takes the development time a little bit further than what you would initially hope to. Now, typically trying to get it onto the App Store, once you've gone through the pain of getting everything on there how they like it, was quite refreshing to see that it was relatively fast process. And typically from the 2 or 3 times that we did an upload to the App Store, it was around a 1-week waiting period. For Android, we were looking at needing a PC and an Android mobile device. Now, PC for us, that was easy to come by, as most of the game development work that we've been doing has been in utilizing a PC. But Android device, that depending on who we were trying to test it with. And funnily enough, for this, we spent many times across the campus with test runs of GPS location at the University of Northampton. Myself and Ben Green were using his phone to try and test out the discrepancy as much as we could. After that, I was also using my partner's phone because, silly me, I only had an iPhone to be able to test that on. However, it did come in handy because we also needed one of those. Now, we also needed to consider that to have a developer account for Google Play, we needed to also spend $25. That's per year, which means that together we were looking at over $100 just to get this onto the App Store, which is a big consideration for individuals and small companies that have to worry about their cash flow. Now, we thought that it was going to be all fine and dandy trying to get it onto the Google Play Store, but what we found was that the process of actually making the build for Apple was really quite long, and in terms of using Xcode, we had to figure out how to get through that. But getting it onto the store and accepted was relatively easy in comparison to the Google Play Store. We had extensive checks, which lasted sort of 2 to 3 weeks, and also we had to go back over and over again to rectify certain messages, rectify the fact that one of the instances was because we said that in the synopsis of the project that it was available on Apple and Android, that neither of the two app stores wanted either of the other app stores mentioned within the synopsis, which meant that even those small changes needed to be gone back to for another week-long waiting period or a 2 to 3 week long waiting period. So even small things like that can crop up that can send your timeline through as a developer way back, and it took us probably all the way from around the end of June to the end of August to be able to get everything through into a position that we were relatively happy with. And we finally got it through, we thought, and then we had this issue come through on our app. We needed to make sure that anything with augmented reality had a warning on it. So after all that, we had to go all the way back to Unity to add in this message that individuals needed to be aware of their surroundings at the Chester House estate, as it is a working farm, etc. It needed that message in there to say that there's rabbit holes, steep slopes, trees, fences, nettles, etc. that could all be a hazard for anybody that's using the app. So we thought this is our time to shine. We're done. But making apps can be tiresome. We had so many problems, not just with what we had there, but with other things as well. So initially, aspect ratios we had issues with. So a normal 5.5 inch screen is a 16:9 ratio, which worked really quite nicely. But what we didn't take into consideration was that we needed to actually provide the changes for the others. So the iPhone 6.5 inch screen doesn't equal 16.9. It's 463 by 214, which meant that we had parts of our user interface going off the side of the screen, which I was trying to make sure that you could see there. You can see it slightly through the back. Now, also we need to consider that the 12.9 inch iPads also don't equal 16/9. It's 683/512, which meant that parts of the UI decided that they wanted to escape the screen. So we had to go back and make adjustments again. So this is the second time. Additionally, then we had file sizes that we needed to rectify. Now, I'm just going to set this back 1 second so you can see the image. Let's bring these images to the forefront. Apologies, my animations. Okay, so the aspect ratios were slightly off. We also were dealing with file size issues in that we needed to make sure that we could get an app onto the stores that was less than 150 megabytes. We were sitting at 246. This was split up into icons, images, materials, models, and voice lines that had been prepped during the process. Now, we also had help from Jim Harris on this. He's the voice line for every piece within the app. But we started off with the map that was provided for the site that you will see at the site if you visit. And file sizes, what we actually forgot to mention was that we needed to get that under 150. Now, when you don't mention this to your developers earlier on, this becomes a bit of a difficulty later on. So in terms of learning, make sure you realize what you're building for has restrictions. Now, this image was a 20 megabyte, 32-bit uncompressed image that sat at a really high rate. Now, we condensed that to a 16-bit image at a JPEG compression, and that already turned to a 2.7 megabyte range. So all of the images that were in the app needed to be altered as well. Now, we also looked at the compression of the sound and changed that from 75 megabyte to 16 megabyte. So it's important for you to recognize that technical design, technical art, and technical processes are extremely important when generating mobile apps. So are naming conventions. Even the name of the application that you produce needs to fulfill the requirements of the App Store. So you'll see from the message here that an APK wasn't allowed to have certain characters within it, and it also couldn't exceed a certain amount of characters. And also, we had to do significant amounts of testing. Some of the buttons weren't working when we released, and we needed to make sure that we come back to be able to get them into a position that was working. And we also needed to generate the images for the stores. So not only did we need to change the aspect ratio within the game development process, we also needed to take photographs for the marketing of the app on each of the stores so that then they could be received by people that would purchase the app, even though it's free on each of the stores. They could then see what the app would look like from the off. So finally, we got it in a position where it was looking good. So what we learned was GPS accuracy is an issue in the current technological state, and the location that we're currently in 2023. Photogrammetry still struggles with translucency and specular light, and also heavy objects are quite difficult to suspend from the ceiling and have images taken of them. Rotating and maneuvering them still was something that we were having to rely on. The best photogrammetry results were achieved with one of the following combinations: a DSLR camera taking them and putting them into Polycam or Mesh Lab for fidelity, or a mobile phone camera to Polycam for the budget option. Now, to be able to actually sort of maneuver around the object, obviously the mobile phone camera was the best option for us at the time. But overall, mobile development is somewhat costly. The £3,000 budget that we initially had for the project went rather quickly on the employment of individuals to work on it, and some of the resources we had to rely on what already existed at the university and at the site of the Ark and Chester House. Scanning heavy objects requires a lot of extra work, and we need a lot of storage for the raw images to get the best results with photogrammetry. And you need to make sure that you've got developers who are autonomous and of which can be depended upon. This is a big one, really, in that you need to be able to rely on your artists, programmers, and designers as game developers to be able to do the job that they've been assigned and that they know how to do, or to go and research how to do it and develop their skills. And we have some further ideas for development and research. Gaussian splatting at a cost-effective price. There's a new version of, I would say, a more extravagant version, that is, of photogrammetry that doesn't necessarily have the issues with translucency and bounced light. Trying to find a cost-effective price or method to be able to do that is somewhere that we can take a look in the future. Also, to provide guidance and support for layman 3D scanners so that we don't have to have people that are 3D experts every time going in and scanning the objects to recreate them as we did with this project. Also, we'll take a look at mobile web application development as an alternative and its implications. Instead of uploading every time to the app stores, could we just enable individuals to access these artifacts through their web browser and integrate sound and augmented reality as a part of that? Also, it'd be good to actually apply a database or repository that you can be used to capture user interaction statistics and inform future development and research. Develop a platform for archaeologists to upload and place their own scanned finds once we've obviously taken care of the guidance for 3D scanning. And create and utilize a company and cut out the payroll middleman. A lot of the budget that we had, unfortunately, went on providing a payroll service for our student employees. So that is the Chester House Estate app, and you'll be able to find it on both the Apple and the Google Play stores. If you have any questions, you can contact myself, robert.lambert@staffs.ac.uk. I've also been made a visiting fellow again at Northampton University, so I will also be able to be contacted at rob.lambert@northampton.ac.uk. And any questions or queries or investigation that you want to participate in about the Chester House, you can see the link there above. Further reading can be found on Pure at Northampton about the project. Thanks for listening. Is there any questions?
Hi, Rob. Yeah, we had 2 questions. First question we had from Jennifer from our department, asking, are there any publications on the project?
There aren't at the moment. Actually, we're currently in the process of generating them and talking about the process that you've just listened to. So no, there isn't currently. I'm hoping to be able to get that sorted by the end of this academic year.
And we had another question from Nope, not using a real name, asking, virtual reality content interaction. Do you foresee something like a real-time guided AR tour through no longer intact or functioning places with local telemetry in the relatively near future? I'll take
I,
that
I
first.
think the difficulty with virtual reality is somewhat reliant on a curator, unless you have the device yourself. In positions or rather locations like the Chester House Estate, where you are out in the open, you're going to want like for like with no discrepancy GPS located imagery, so that then you can interact with the environment as it is. And I think without the sort of the ability to get no discrepancy between the satellite and the mobile towers, etc., that we're currently relying on with mobile devices, I think that we're a little bit off that yet. And in terms of combining the two of them, we then got to consider the implications that arise from it. 3DOF VR, we'll look at sort of just digesting what is around us. 6DOF, or degrees of freedom, we're looking at being able to move as well. And I think that what you're perhaps trying to allude to there is potentially a 7DOF, and that you'll be able to interact with the objects themselves as well, like the actual environment. And I think that without being placed in more reliable environments, let's say, at first, that I don't think we're going to be getting to that in the very near future, at least.
We do have another question from Joe asking, do you have any projects that you're working on? Or do you have a new project that you're working on?
Yes. So since then, I did say that some of the things that we were trying to do was cut out the middleman. We started our own company that solely employs students and graduates. We've been working on a couple more, actually. We've been working on the gang awareness game that is alongside the Northamptonshire Police. We've been working with a company called Little Big Things CIC to create a Luton Hat heritage game-based simulation of what a Luton hat factory would have looked like, that needed to be reimagined, as we don't really have anything left to take that off other than sort of archives. We've been trying to move further and further into the heritage area as well. I guess watch this space over the next sort of year or two, certainly with my collaboration with Staffordshire University, University of Northampton, Builders Brew, the company, and other entities that we're trying to work with.
We have one final question from Nope, not using a real name again, asking, thinking something more like peripheral, local devices to triangulate device position and rotation in the way VR headsets do, as a USB phone peripheral, perhaps, in relation to this last question. Yeah.
I think initially I would like to sort of mention that virtual reality was never the sort of the goal really with the Chester House Estate app, but in terms of being able to utilize it in specific areas, again, I'd have to say that I don't know if the technology is there yet to be able to support something that could be lacking the discrepancy. And obviously the point that we made earlier on about having to make sure that everybody was made safe on site, I don't think we could guarantee that yet with what we're currently having to utilize. So I'm probably not the best person at the moment to talk about virtual reality, as most of the projects that I've done haven't really utilized them as much in recent projects, that is. But I don't see it becoming something in the very immediate future, but I definitely would say that we're probably going to end up at that at some point.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you, Robert, for your insights into this and I suppose the trials and tribulations you put yourself through to get this completed. Thank you for everyone that has answered questions and asked and answered questions. If you do have any feedback you'd like to offer us, you can put it through at our Microsoft Forms link here, and I'll give some time to do that. And I mean, Rob, I have a question. What's the largest thing you've scanned?
I think it was probably the top of the castle turret. That was probably about, I'd say, a third of the size of a car, and it weighed probably 300 or 400 kilograms, potentially somewhere between 200 and 400 kilograms. So it was very heavy and quite difficult to maneuver. So that was, I would say, the biggest of this project was that. However, we've tried cars and things like that in the past, so those would take the title on that one.
Yeah, awesome. Well, again, thank you, Rob, and thank you for everyone for partaking. Next, we are moving over to Dr. Andrew Wedgbury, who's going to talk to us about one game to rule them all, how game studies may unlock the secrets to humanity. So if you're feeling philosophical, this talk will be very interesting for you. So, Rob, thank you for your time, and thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. See ya.